First contact fire. The vast emptiness of space surrounded the UEF constellation, its titanium hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her weathered face reflecting the holographic displays that hovered before her. 20 years in Earth's United Fleet had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming. Status report on that anomalous signal, Lieutenant Chen, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through countless missions defending humanity's expanding frontier. Chen's fingers danced across the control panel. Signal confirmed, Commander. It's coming from Outpost Helios on the edge of the Arcturus sector. It's a distress call. The bridge fell silent as the message played through the speakers, broken by static but unmistakable in its urgency. This is Captain Cato of Outpost Helios. We are under attack by unknown forces. Massive vessels, technology beyond anything we've encountered. Casualties mounting. Request immediate. The message cut off abruptly, replaced by emptiness. Elena's jaw tightened. Helios was home to over 3,000 colonists, researchers, and military personnel. It was humanity's furthest reach into the stars, a symbol of their expansion. How long ago was this transmitted? She asked. Approximately 14 hours ago, Commander. The quantum relay network experienced significant disruption in that sector. Helena made her decision instantly. Set course for Helios, maximum burn, and send word to Fleet Command. Tell them we're responding to a possible first contact scenario gone hostile. The constellation surged forward, its massive fusion drives igniting with blue-white intensity as it prepared for the jump to FTL. Elena studied the tactical display, her mind racing through scenarios. Humanity had encountered alien life before, microbial organisms on distant moons, simple multicellular creatures in the oceans of exoplanets, but never an intelligent spacefaring civilization. First contact protocols existed, but they assumed peaceful intentions. Commander, Communications Officer Dias spoke up. Fleet Command acknowledges our transmission. Admiral Zhao is mobilizing the 4th Fleet as backup, but they're 3 days out at best. We'll have to make do with what we have, Elena replied. The Constellation was a formidable vessel, a sovereign-class destroyer with the latest railgun technology and quantum shielding, but it wasn't designed to face an unknown enemy alone. The journey to Helios took 9 hours. 9 hours of preparation, of battle simulations against an enemy they couldn't possibly understand, of Elena recording messages to the families of her crew in case they didn't return. When they dropped out of FTL, the horror of what awaited them stunned even the most seasoned officers on the bridge. Outpost Helios was in ruins. The once proud research station was now a collection of twisted metal and floating debris. And surrounding it, like predators circling wounded prey, were 7 massive vessels unlike anything humanity had ever built. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Chen. The alien ships resembled massive arrowheads, their hulls a deep obsidian that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Pulsing veins of crimson energy ran along their surfaces, and at their center, a glowing red eye-like structure rotated slowly, scanning the surrounds. "Life signs on the outpost," Elena demanded. Scattered readings, maybe 200 survivors, clustered in the central hub. Environmental systems are failing. They have hours at most. Elena's mind raced. The Constellation was outnumbered and likely outgunned. But those were her people down there, and she'd be damned if she abandoned them. Tactical analysis of those vessels. Weapons Officer Santos spoke up. "Energy readings are off the charts, Commander. Their hull composition is unlike anything in our database. I'm detecting what appear to be weapons ports, but the configuration is alien." "We're being scanned," Chen announced, tension evident in his voice. "They know we're here." Elena straightened her uniform. "Open a channel. All frequencies, universal translator active. Channel open. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Federation vessel Constellation. You have attacked a human outpost, an act of war against our species. We demand you withdraw immediately and explain your actions." For several tense moments, there was no response. Then, a harsh guttural voice echoed through the bridge, the translator struggling to keep up. "Humans, you expand without permission. You take what is not yours. The Vex Dominion claims this space. Your presence is trespass. Trespass is met with cleansing." The transmission cut off abruptly. Alina had no time to process the implications before Santos shouted, "Enemy vessels powering weapon systems." The alien vessels, the Vex, as they called themselves, moved with surprising grace for their size. They spread out in a formation that Alina recognized as a classic encirclement maneuver. Whoever these beings were, they understood warfare. "They're targeting us with some kind of energy weapon," Santos reported, his voice trained. "Reading massive power buildup. Evasive maneuvers. Pattern Delta 9. Alina commanded. The constellation lurched as its thrusters fired, attempting to break the encirclement. Too late. A beam of intensely focused crimson energy shot forth from the lead Vex vessel, striking the human ship's shields. The bridge shuddered violently. "Shield integrity at 64% from a single hit," Chen reported in disbelief. Alina gripped her command chair. "Return fire. All main batteries. Target the lead vessel." The constellation's railguns roared to life, sending hypersonic projectiles toward the Vex ship. They struck true, but the impact was minimal, little more than surface damage to the alien hull. "Their armor is regenerating," Santos said in disbelief. Another beam lanced out, striking the constellation amidships. The lights flickered, and damage reports flooded in from all decks. "Shields at 31%. We can't take another hit like that." Alina made a split-second decision. "Launch rescue shuttles to the outpost. Get as many survivors as we can. Then set course for the Proxima relay station. We need to warn Earth." "Commander, the shuttles will be exposed." "I know. We'll cover them. Ready all remaining missiles. Target their weapons systems specifically." As the rescue shuttles deployed, the constellation positioned itself between them and the Vex vessels, its remaining weapons unleashing everything they had. It wasn't enough to destroy the alien ships, but it created the distraction they needed. The battle that followed was brutal and one-sided. The constellation's shields failed entirely after the third hit. Sections of the ship were venting atmosphere. Casualty reports mounted, but the shuttles managed to retrieve 173 survivors from Helios before the outpost core went critical and exploded. All shuttles accounted for, Chen reported, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead where he'd been thrown against his console. "They're docking now. Execute emergency jump to Proxima," Alina ordered. The damaged ship shuddered as its FTL drive engaged, barely escaping as another energy beam passed through the space they had occupied a moment before. In the relative safety of FTL transit, Alina surveyed the damage to her ship and crew. 39 dead, dozens more injured. The constellation was operating at less than 50% capacity, but they had survived, and they had rescued some of the outpost's personnel. Among the survivors was Dr. Arjun Mehta, Helios's lead xenobiologist. Alina had him brought to the bridge immediately. "Dr. Mehta, I need to know what happened. Who are these Vex, and why did they attack?" Mehta looked shell-shocked, his lab coat stained with blood that wasn't his own. "They came without warning 3 days ago. Their first communication was similar to what you received, claims that we were trespassing on their territory. But, Commander, we've been at Helios for 7 years. We've never detected any sign of their presence or claim to the region." 3 days, Alina repeated. "You held out for 3 days against those ships." Captain Cato managed to activate the station's experimental shield technology. It bought us time, but they were systematically taking the outpost apart, section by section. Mehta's hands trembled. "They're methodical, Commander. This wasn't just an attack. It was extermination." Alina absorbed this information, her tactical mind already formulating what Earth would need to do. Did you learn anything about them? Weaknesses? Vulnerabilities? Meta hesitated. Possibly. Before communications went down, our sensors detected unusual fluctuations in their ship's energy systems during weapons discharge. There's a brief window, milliseconds, where their defensive systems appear to temporarily divert power from their shields to their weapons. It's barely perceptible, but it might be something. Elena nodded grimly. We'll reach Proxima in 6 hours. From there, we can send a quantum transmission to Earth with everything we know. The Fourth Fleet is already mobilizing, but after what I've seen today, they'll need reinforcements. She turned to her bridge crew, noting their exhaustion, their fear, but also their determination. What happened today was just the beginning. These Vex have declared war on humanity, and they caught us unprepared. But that advantage won't last. When we return, we'll bring the full might of Earth's fleet, and we'll show these Vex exactly what happens when you provoke humanity. As the constellation limped toward Proxima, carrying its wounded crew and the survivors of Helios, Elena knew that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had faced its first hostile alien civilization, and they had been outmatched. But humans had never been defined by their first defeat, only by how they rose to overcome it. And rise they would. Humanity unleashed. 3 weeks after the fall of Outpost Helios, the largest human battle fleet ever assembled hung in the void near the Arcturus sector. 117 warships, from nimble frigates to the massive dreadnought UEF Everest, formed a spearhead aimed at the heart of what intelligence now identified as Vex-controlled space. Admiral Zhao stood on the bridge of the Everest, surveying the holographic representation of the fleet. Beside him, now Captain Elena Reyes watched in silence. Her promotion had come after the constellation's return to Earth, along with commendations for her crew. The ship itself was still undergoing repairs, but Elena had been reassigned as tactical advisor to the Admiral, her first-hand experience with the Vex making her invaluable. Have the Vex responded to any of our communication attempts? Elena asked. Zhao shook his head. They've expanded their presence in the sector. 7 ships have become 23. They've established what appears to be a forward operating base in the remains of Helios. The Admiral's face was impassive, but his voice carried a hint of concern. The simulations based on your encounter don't paint an optimistic picture, Captain. The simulations assume conventional warfare, Admiral, Elena replied. But I've been working with Dr. Mehta and the science team. We think we've identified a potential vulnerability. She activated her datapad, bringing up schematics of the Vex vessels based on the constellation's sensor data. Their weapon systems draw massive amounts of power during discharge, forcing a momentary redistribution from their defensive systems. It's brief, minus 350 milliseconds at most, but it's consistent across all observed Vex ships. That's barely enough time to target, let alone land an effective strike, Zhao pointed out. Not with conventional targeting systems, Elena agreed, but we've developed a predictive algorithm based on their attack patterns, and we've modified our quantum torpedoes to exploit this window. Admiral Zhao studied the data, his expression thoughtful. A coordinated attack then. Multiple ships targeting a single Vex vessel at precisely the right moment. Yes, sir. It's our best chance. Their technology outclasses ours, but humanity has always excelled at identifying and exploiting weaknesses. Zhao nodded decisively. We'll implement your strategy, Captain. Organize the fleet into strike groups of 5 ships each. The Everest will coordinate the overall assault. As the fleet prepared for battle, Elena found herself in the officers' mess, surrounded by commanders and captains who would be leading their ships into combat. Many were veterans of Earth's unification wars, hardened by conflict against other humans, but none had faced an alien threat of this magnitude. Commander Jackson of the frigate Defiant voiced what many were thinking. What if this doesn't work? What if we're just sending our fleet to slaughter? Elena met his gaze steadily. Then we make them pay so dearly for their victory that they think twice before pushing deeper into human space. She stood, addressing the gathered officers. The Vex attacked without provocation. They slaughtered thousands of civilians and military personnel alike. They believe us weak, unworthy of consideration or mercy. Today, we prove them wrong. The battle plan was elegant in its simplicity. The human fleet would approach in 3 waves. The first wave, primarily frigates and destroyers, would engage the Vex at maximum range, forcing them to activate their weapons. The second wave would target Vex ships during their vulnerability windows, using the modified quantum torpedoes. The third wave, led by the Everest, would exploit any breaches created in the Vex formation. As the fleet approached the Arcturus sector, long-range scanners confirmed what they had feared. The Vex fleet had grown to 30 vessels, including a massive ship that dwarfed even the Everest. The new vessel appears to be a command ship, Zhao noted. If we can disable or destroy it, we might disrupt their entire operation. Elena studied the tactical display. We should adjust our attack vectors. Focus our initial strikes on their support vessels, then converge on the command ship once we've confirmed the effectiveness of our strategy. The admiral agreed, and the fleet adjusted its approach. The tension on the bridge was palpable as they entered the outer bounds of the Arcturus sector, the ruins of Helios visible as a cloud of debris on their scanners. All ships, battle positions, Zhao commanded. First wave, commence attack. The human frigates and destroyers surged forward, their engines flaring as they accelerated toward the Vex formation. The alien vessels responded as expected, their crimson energy weapons charging. Energy spike detected in Vex weapon systems, reported the Everest's tactical officer. Firing sequence initiated. The space between the fleets lit up with energy discharges as the Vex opened fire. Several human ships took direct hits, their shields flaring and in some cases failing entirely. Calculate vulnerability windows and transmit targeting data to second wave, Elena ordered. The AI system processed the data in milliseconds, identifying the precise moments when each Vex ship would be most vulnerable. The information was instantly relayed to the second wave of human vessels. Second wave. Execute attack pattern Sierra, Zhao commanded. 25 human warships launched their quantum torpedoes simultaneously, each targeted at specific Vex vessels during their calculated vulnerability windows. The torpedoes, enhanced with experimental phase-shifting technology, were designed to bypass shields entirely if they struck during the vulnerability period. On the tactical display, Elena watched anxiously as the torpedoes streaked toward their targets. If their calculations were wrong, if the Vex had adapted their systems since the constellation's encounter, the attack would fail. The first impacts came seconds later. A Vex destroyer shuddered as 3 torpedoes struck it precisely when its shields were weakened. The explosions tore through its hull, sending cascading failures through its systems. Before the alien vessel could recover, it broke apart in a spectacular eruption of energy. Direct hit. Vex destroyer neutralized. The tactical officer reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Similar reports came in from across the battlefield. Of the 20 targets, 17 had been successfully hit during their vulnerability windows. Those 17 ships were either destroyed or severely damaged. It's working. Elena breathed, hardly daring to believe it. But the Vex adapted quickly. The remaining vessels adjusted their firing patterns, making their vulnerability windows less predictable. The massive command ship, untouched by the initial attack, began to emit a signal that appeared to coordinate the defensive maneuvers of the surviving fleet. They're learning, Zhao noted grimly. Third wave, prepare to engage. Focus all fire on the command vessel. The Everest led the third wave forward, its massive engines propelling it toward the heart of the Vex formation. The human dreadnought was a behemoth, designed to absorb punishment while delivering devastating firepower. Its main cannon, a magnetically accelerated mass driver, could deliver projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Target the command ship's central structure, Elena advised. Based on the configurations we've observed, That's likely where their command and control systems are located. The Vex seemed to recognize the threat the Everest posed. Multiple vessels broke formation to intercept the dreadnought, their weapons charging. But they had to divide their attention between the human flagship and the continuing attacks from the rest of the fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Zhao ordered as the first Vex energy beams lanced toward the Everest. The massive ship lurched, surprisingly agile for its size, avoiding the worst of the barrage. Its shields still flared as glancing hits connected, but they held. "Main cannon charged and ready," reported the weapons officer. "Fire when their next vulnerability window opens," Alina said, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The AI calculated the optimal firing solution, tracking the command ship's movement and its weapons discharge patterns. The moment came, a brief window when the massive alien vessel diverted power to fire at one of the human cruisers. Fire. The Everest shuddered as its main cannon discharged, sending a projectile massing several tons toward the Vex command ship at incredible velocity. The shot struck home during the precise moment of vulnerability, tearing through the weakened shields and impacting the central structure. The effect was more dramatic than anyone had anticipated. The Vex command ship didn't simply take damage, it seemed to lose cohesion. The crimson energy veins that ran along its hull flickered erratically, and secondary explosions rippled across its surface. "Something's happening to their other ships," the tactical officer reported in astonishment. On the display, the remaining Vex vessels showed similar signs of disruption. Their coordinated movements became erratic, their weapons fire sporadic and misdirected. The command ship must control the others through some form of quantum entanglement, Alina realized. By disrupting its systems, we've affected the entire fleet. Admiral Zhao seized the opportunity. "All ships, concentrate fire on damaged Vex vessels. Don't give them time to recover or adapt." The human fleet pressed its advantage, targeting the now vulnerable Vex ships with everything they had. Without their coordinated defense systems, the alien vessels fell one by one. The battle lasted another 37 minutes. When it was over, the human fleet had lost 23 ships, with many others damaged. But every Vex vessel had been destroyed or disabled, including the massive command ship, which continued to drift, its systems failing as human boarding parties secured it for research. Alina stood on the observation deck of the Everest, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Vex fleet. Admiral Zhao joined her, his uniform bearing the marks of the battle, a torn sleeve, scorch marks from when a conduit had ruptured on the bridge. "The science teams are already examining the Vex technology," he said. "What we learn could advance our own capabilities by decades." "They'll be back," Alina replied. This was just one fleet. If they're an empire, as they claimed, they'll have more ships, possibly even more advanced than these. Zhao nodded, "which is why we won't be waiting for them next time." He handed her a datapad with new orders. "The Security Council has authorized the formation of a special task force. Its mission: to take the fight to the Vex, to gather intelligence on their civilization, and to determine whether coexistence is possible or if this war must continue to its conclusion." Alina read the orders, noting that she had been named to lead this task force. Operation Forward Shield. "Humanity has been content to explore our little corner of the galaxy at our own pace," Zhao said. "The Vex have forced us to accelerate those plans. We'll need to establish more outposts, build more ships, push our boundaries further than we ever planned." Alina thought of the survivors from Helios, of the crew she'd lost on the constellation. They thought we were weak. They thought we would break. She turned to face the Admiral. They were wrong. As preparations began for Operation Forward Shield, news of the victory spread throughout human space. Recruitment for the unified fleet doubled, then tripled. Research into new technologies based on Vex designs progressed rapidly. The attack on Helios, meant to crush humanity's expansion, had instead catalyzed it. 3 months later, a new fleet departed Earth orbit, led by the newly commissioned UEF Defiance under the command of Captain Alina Reyes. Their mission was not mere exploration or defense, but a proactive push into the unknown, to secure humanity's place among the stars through diplomacy when possible and force when necessary. The Vex had made a critical error. They had assumed that humanity, young in its journey to the stars, would be easily cowed by superior technology and aggression. They had failed to recognize the defining characteristic that had brought humans from their first crude tools to the vastness of space: adaptability. And now, the galaxy would witness what happened when humanity's full potential was unleashed.